All right, so we're going to work this process of getting the balance into your back line, all the way from the heel bones and to the sitting bones, is kind of how it begins. So go ahead and face to your wall, and you're going to bring your hands to present pressure, which will kind of revert back into your shoulders. So I want you to first just feel kind of this basic association with touching the wall with the hands. And then walk your feet back. I know some of you have a blanket that is at the center of your mat. You might sample lifting your heels on the blanket, which is kind of an interesting balance attempt. And you might bring your heels firmly down the floor. But I want you to work your way so your hands are reaching from your shoulder base, stretching your armpit chest, and then lowering your head so that your brain is centered between your arms. If the shoulders or the armpits notice this intense, deep stretch, you can alleviate that and kind of neutralize the pressure by walking your feet closer to the wall and bending your knees. But what I want to explore on this one is simply feeling your sitting bones reaching back, the heels of the feet pressing down either up on the blanket or to the floor, and just sort out a few moments feeling this kind of deepening awareness, filling kind of all the corners of the body, right? From the hands to the armpits, side waist lengthens, thick back ribs. And then we'll bring our hands, if your feet are actually lifted on the blanket, walk them forward off the blanket. And then bring your hands above your knees and feel the hands in that platform of the legs, and let the hips have a sense of movement back, but not necessarily farther downward. So I want you to feel like you're in this bit of a squat pose. And you're going to round your back so the chin curls in towards the chest. Let the spine stretch right through that movement. And then inhale, feel the arching of the back. So it would be a standing cat-cow, right? Round the back, chin curling through the back muscles, and then reaching the chest gradually forward, hip sense movement back. With two more, we're going to develop that current of movement with breath. So feel when the hands press, feel when the hips move back. And when you have that experience of the legs under you to support you, we're going to start to move ourselves to a centered position, but turning carefully so that your back is to the wall, your heels and your feet are right up to that bolster, which is flat. So if you're using for legs up the wall 2 blankets, that would be fine as well. But I want you to have the legs distant from the wall so that when you lean down and take a forward bend, you have your hands touching back to the prop that's lifted next to the wall, bolster or blankets, and then feel the adjacent movement of your belly and just the front body down to the legs, and let the arms dangle down, either holding your elbows or letting the arms reach to the prop behind you, or simply spine stretching, and wherever the arms end up is organically what's going to happen for you. So you can go with either direction and specific teaching, or wherever it lands, so the spine extends and kind of waves down to the brainstem. Release the neck, the whole length through the back of the body. Exhale completely. Now, when your hands can reach back to your blanket or bolsters, you're going to scoot yourself actually to sit to that prop. So take the feet a little forward. We all get down to the floor in different organized fashions for our needs. So when you come back to sit onto that prop, you're going to work your way to swing the legs up the wall. So walk the feet over to one side so you feel your seat on that prop next to the wall. And then you're going to actually move your tush as close to the wall as you can, not the base, but the wall right above the bolster. And then rotate so you turn and the legs lift up. Now, of course, we all are going to find our way there at our own unique capacity of rotation. But when you do get your legs up, I want you to have a blanket under your head. No requirement to have anything on your feet, but if you want to add the sand, it might be a nice experience for the gravity, right, of the situation and circulating through the thighs. So you can use either a sandbag on the soles of the feet, adjust. If you don't want sand on your feet and you have a sandbag, your other area of support might be your lower abdomen to feel the movement of the diaphragm and strengthen the diaphragm. So either area is good. Sometimes when your legs are at the wall, it feels nice to have nothing on the soles of the feet because the wall is supporting that connectivity of centering the legs. If we're in the middle of the room, we kind of need something to center them up, but the wall does a nice job. So either bring the legs so that you have your feet flexing with sand or no sand. Sand could be on your belly as well. Spread the elbows so that they move in a distant plane away from the heart center. And as your head is relaxed back on whatever height you feel comfortable with, whatever is comfortable under your head. And that could be this actual height. It might be a little bit less, but encourage the neck musculature to center and your eyes to rest back. And as we awake the core body with the breath, commit to having the legs supported by the wall. Even if you have some capacity to move your legs away and challenge your hips, try to let the legs stay completely supported. Soften a little bit with the knees. Receive your breath. Belly full. And relax on your out breath. Empty your lungs. Now, as you organize the relationship of the pelvis on the height, it's important to do a little more than just sort of copy the shape. You know, you take a session and you see how it should look and then you copy it. That's kind of how we learn. But, you know, a little bit of that insight into the directional movement of your breath or the movement of the muscles. And you might not really consider that the core body, the back of the core is, you know, quite musculature, muscle, a lot of muscle, especially like your glutes, those areas, you really are required to use those to have good kind of functioning. So we're going to work with that area quite a bit today in the start. So where you have that core, if you have a sandbag in the core, I want you to remove that and then let the abdomen kind of dome on the in-breath so you can feel when the diaphragm is moving in that direction, the stomach actually moves, right? So it's more than just a belly, right? There's so many other things involved. I guess a belly has, you know, the organs, the intra-abdominal pressure and the abdominal organs. But you might think about the pelvic organs here too. So when we work with kind of pelvic floor, we're adding the layer of the legs, right? From the hip all the way to the knee, that awareness in that zone. So let's start to slide the knees, well, the feet down, the knees to bending, and only so much that you can then move your feet off the wall. Otherwise, the sandbag ends up on your tush and then bend your knees, and it might be helpful to remove the sand. And then as you bring your feet out at the wall, I mean, it depends on how much space you have where you are. I have a little limited room, but I can move my legs so they have that feeling of external rotation. It's so nice to do this type of shape that, you know, when you're not sitting on the sitting bones, because the drain of the legs is just, it's just kind of nice and comforting for the leg muscles. So if they're a little shaky, you can always bring the legs in a little closer, you can hold them, but let's start bringing the feet so they slide together and they lower down the wall. And your hands are going to touch to the inner leg. It could be close to the knee, could be a little bit central, and find where you press with both hands and that connectivity. Other things you can do with pressing here is you can use blocks, which we're going to use pretty soon. So of course that requires, like, you're using an external object to kind of put energy into the muscle, but your arms are so connected to the whole system that it's nice to have objects sometimes to some props. So steady the weight in the back of the pelvis. And I want you then to let the legs come back up for a few seconds, stretching them outwards. And just notice if there's any difference in the circulation in the inner thighs, okay? What I like about this is there's zero knee pressure. It just feels like, oh, it's comfortable. I have some circulation in the adductors, but there's absolutely zero joint issues, okay? So now when you slide your feet down, so the knees are apart, I want you to start to move your blanket back, and you're actually going to slide back on the ground space, back away from the wall, and move your blanket. You don't have to have your blanket under your head for these. And feel where your feet are positioned in a wide stance. What we're going to do is bring the right foot up to the left knee, over to the left knee, and take a block and place that block at its mid setting. If you are really tall, you know, or long arms, you might go, well, the flat one works better for you because you don't want to have your shoulders bunched up to your ears. So find the two different options with the block. And I want you to place that block so you first feel it at true inner thiness. Not too close to the knee right now. Just feel that inner thigh structure. Feel that sensation adductorly, the adductorness of it all. That could be a word to have some fun wordplay with, adductor. Now the left foot pushes into the wall. So use the wall for kind of like your idea of weight bearing, energy, pressing, securing the balance, okay? So give a few moments here of pressing. And now I'm going to add a layer for some of you who want to move your right leg a bit. So you're going to keep that pressure in the inner thigh, but some of you will stay with this position and maybe move the block or palpate the inner thigh to try to loosen up some of those adductor tissues. And the second option would be to move the block to the floor and actually bring that right foot off that left knee and then hold the outside of the right foot with your hand and then try to move that right knee over towards the floor. So, but this left foot has to stay to the wall with that knee centered so it's not flopping out. So this would be isolating the one side. So if you're a little bit clear, but not completely, your back is entirely on the floor and you are trying to hold the outer bones of that right foot with your right hand. And if it's difficult to get that, you can use a belt. You can put it around your foot, hold, and then draw that knee down. So it's all external rotation, right? The left foot, though, is keeping that spine centered. So you have to keep the foot pushing so the spine stays grounded. Okay, now switch sides. So we'll put the right foot back to the wall and then cross so the left foot is to the right knee. And then as you notice, right away, you might notice that right knee kind of spins a little bit out. So stay with the discipline. Very simple. If your tail feels like it's wagging, you want to get kind of still and calm. Okay. So the knee on that right side might keep turning out. So your work is on the discipline of putting that left ankle to the space just above the right knee, depending on how you look at your knee, right? It kind of looks below, but it is above the knee itself. And then when you add the block to that left inner leg, try to use the block as a wave of pressure to the thigh itself. And when you push into that thigh with your block, can you also concentrate on maintaining that spine to lengthen? Remember cat-cow when we were standing, we had that arch and the rounding. Feel if you can have a little bit of play with that in this position, but then go to lengthening to keep the space in the back centered. Right knee is going to stay in control. So you might turn your right foot so it's completely toes up the wall. And then those that want to stay with this, it does require some arm tenacity, doesn't it, to push into your block. So it just depends on what you're comfortable with doing here. But we can move the block for a moment out. Reach the left hand for the left foot, and then as you move the left leg off of that right connector, you are trying to stretch the knee open and down. Now, you can do things like put your block right beside your left hip and put your leg so it touches that block, so you have some sense of commitment and a designated stopping point for the leg, if that's a little concerning for you. But feel how this inner thigh musculature is gradually moving open. We're going to do a whole lane of travel from inner hip to outer hip. So we may as well take it seriously. Okay, so you don't have to have a block there, but I'm starting to notice that feels pretty secure for me. So feel the left foot flexing. This is a popular shape to work with in the Relax and Renew series, but I've now noticed that we haven't done this type of shape for as long as I can remember in our curriculum. So learning, adding. Okay, now as you start to move that left hand away from holding the foot and pulling, you're going to move the left foot back to the wall and add a block between the knees. Block is narrow, center, between the knees. And then as you push directly in, you might feel the back arching, okay? This is important to have a wall space, right, for these, so you get feedback or feedback. So it's worth finding a spot at home to do this. So when you feel this hinge of the hips, I want you to develop the movement of your back. And it seems a little exaggerative, but let your back lengthen on the ground like you're trying to scoop your tail and then lift your hips up. That should eliminate some of this hip flexor discharge. I find that happens. I'm sensitive in the hip flexors to quite a few of these poses as time goes on. So if you don't want a blanket under your head, remove that. But I want you to feel your arms move overhead, lift up the hips. And then as you lower down your spine and then the pelvis, arms go forward and down. Yeah, adjust anything you need so you're comfortable with this. And then as you lengthen down the spine, feel the spine lengthen. Then you feel a little bit of a scoop, right? With the feet pushing into the wall. That's part of the scoop action. And then lift up the arms and stretch the hips up and back and the arms overhead. Now continue this cycle of movement with a couple opportunities. One would be the hands are on the thighs when you lift up. So you push into the thighs so that energy of the hip flexors is not gripping, right? You're trying to lengthen this hinge at the thigh lid. And that's a challenge, right? And part of that I'm learning is getting my spine to move, which for many of us in this group, the spine, the back muscles are okay. They're coached nicely. You have some strength there. Use it. And then as you lower down, you're going to remove the block and bring your feet together and knees out in Baddha Konasana on the bolster. Now, if you're using a blanket stack for what you had before, I would change it out for the bolster if you can. But place the blocks under the legs and get a feel here as close as those blocks are going to go in next to your hips, how that feels. If it's kind of jabby, you can contour your blocks, right? You can kind of tip them up on their side. Takes a little bit of work, but it's worth the ease. Yeah, that kind of hooks into the thighs. And then we bring our arms to grasp onto a belt. Again, you can have your blanket under or not, and sometimes changing it out is good. But as you hold onto your belt overhead, take that handling of your belt comfortably so you're balancing internally through the rib cage. So let your head nod side to side, and then work your arms to gradually pull on the belt. The belt its fabric is not going to push out like elastic. So there's resistance. So feel how close the hands can now go, and then stay with that resistance. Not that you want them shoulder distance as a goal, but let your goal be very individually prescribed here. Kind of notice the right side, left side differences. We're trying to find evenness in the texture of both armpits. And then that flushes down to your breathing regularity and that core for a few more moments. Breathe and empty the lungs. Try to empty all the way. You can feel the natural wave of the diaphragm, right? If you really tap into the motion of the core. But as we take away that grip on the belt, we're going to move our arms down to the elbow slide, straight down so you're in cactus. So kind of notice the arm development was back and spanning wide, and then sliding down to cactus. Elbows are wide. So if that gives you some usefulness in your shoulders and your chest, I would just kind of notice that, okay? Now we're going to add layers. So if any of these layers start to get too many, you can just stay where you are and observe, and then maybe you add in. But as we move our knees to pointing up, center, we're going to take a supported wall bridge, and I want you to actually use 2 blocks for this underneath you. So it's immensely supported. Now I'm going to use a blanket on this version since it's so restorative in nature. So we push down into our bolster to lift up. Now we got a couple blocks, and the low height works nicely. Some of you might be comfortable with the mid height, but you're going to slide your blocks under the back of your pelvis and also under your lower back. And notice it doesn't make sense to put the block, one of them under your legs. Okay, right? That wouldn't really hold you up. But you want this whole centerpiece to be supported. Now this takes a little bit of working out. So when we put our feet at the wall, I want you to have this so that you have your feet up at the wall. One choice. 2 choice, second choice is your feet are down on the bolster. Okay, now if your blocks are flat, that'll be easy. But if they're not flat, it's kind of difficult. Now you can tell if you touch your thighs, this is an interesting energy around the legs, the upper legs, right? It kind of changes the tone. It opens up the hip flexors. So a sandbag on the top of the thighs is is going to make this perfect, right? It'll help it out to seal the deal. But another thing I use sometimes is a belt, and I buckle up a belt around the top of my thighs. And it's a little kind of weird what it does to just the skin and the tone of the skin, but it is pretty neat to do that as well. So I'm going to do just sand because it's kind of easy going. But I do want to encourage you to make sure that your feet are at the wall first, that they could be down on the bolster. You don't have to have the bolster or not have the bolster under your legs. You can still use that as a support. Yeah, if the blocks are getting a little bit funky underneath your back, they're not quite centered, they're tippy, you feel like you're about ready to fall off, then you need to take some time to energize literally your base here. Okay, so get the chest open, feel the hands, kind of wildly wondering where to go with this, and then let the palms turn out. Okay, so my elbows are down and the palms are turning open and my legs are a little fatigued with it. So I'm going to lower the feet down a tiny bit. You can give a whole explanation how you're doing if you want to share. But the legs with the sand is a little bit of work, right? It's a little weight bearing. You can feel the challenge with that. And you certainly do not have to use sand. You cannot use sand if you prefer to go bridge without. Okay, now those of you that do have your legs all the way down the bolster, you can tell how that can be quite centering. So now let's activate the leg musculature. So you push into the wall and you let the front rim of the thighs release open. Okay, so give yourself about another 15 seconds here. You can shuffle the sandbag down if you like how it's lengthening the front of the thighs. There's nothing wrong with incorporating that directional flow. Feel the upper back of the shoulders span open the front rim of the chest. Blanket or no blanket under your brain. Choose your own kind of solo direction with that. And belly relaxes with the breath. Okay, now with this pattern of movement, push into your feet. I know some of you might have your legs a little bit up at the wall versus on the bolster. So lowering them down at this final stage might be the kind of the experience, maybe not of a lifetime, but of the pose, is to get that completion. Even if the front of your thighs are just feeling gripped up. Okay, so slide off any sand. Okay, you're going to be using our bolster in ways to help the hip out pretty soon. So as you start to bring your feet onto the bolster to help you lift up your knees, to help you push down into your feet. So kind of shove the feet into the bolster so your hips lift up just the right amount to slide the blocks away. Now as you lower your spine, okay, you're going to ease the back to the ground. If it feels helpful for you to bring your knees to your chest right now, go for that. And then let the hands hold the knees or the back of the legs and either motion side to side or circling. Okay, I'm going to give some direct motions for the props right now. So those of you that are moving your knees or the leg bone side to side, keep going with that. So what we're going to work with is these lateral rotators of the leg, right? So it connects into the hips, but it's also connecting to release our back. So you're going to take your bolster, and I would use your legs as much as you can to move it around over to the right side, and it's besides your mat. Okay. Now, if you need to kind of scoot yourself around on your flooring, that's going to be kind of part of the deal. That's just how it goes with home practice. You're kind of rolling around your room. But when you stretch your right foot down to the wall, you want to feel, for one thing, the foot, you need a belt pretty soon, FYI, so grab it. You want to feel your foot push and really make contact. If you got a base for it, you know, there's some issues sometimes with your wall space, I know. So find your ball of your foot pushing the wall. If your heel is a little bit lifted because of the base, you might bring your leg up. It's just you have to be careful of hyperextending. If your leg is up the wall, it might drop the back of the knee. So I just stay at the base, as long as you don't have any little pieces of wood sticking into your foot, right? You might have to sand the walls. So bring the left knee in, and then as you take your belt, you want to reach for your foot with your belt. And then as you put that left foot to elevation, hold the belt together with your right hand, and then bend your left knee. This is important that it's bending. It doesn't have to be a very strong angle or deep angle, but I want you to micro bend that left knee. And then cross the left leg to the right, but please keep the right foot toes up at the wall. So the leg doesn't really rotate right now. It will make a difference for this whole situation. So you're pushing into that right foot, your left outer leg is concerned, what's coming? What are you putting me into? And so my back, my SI joint, there's not a lot of play there, right? It's pretty strict. Isolate that left hip, stretch your left arm back further. Keep moving back. If you didn't have that arm reaching, it's okay. You can always begin now. And then as you're experiencing this left thigh, you can let the leg lower down a little bit. You can tug on the belt and pull the leg a little up. But I would encourage you to play with some of these pose patterns, right? Give your body some time to interact with the direction. And as your left knee bends, you're gonna take the belt off your foot, and then your right foot can turn out, right? We've done some turnout work with the feet. So now your left thigh is reaching to the bolster. So I want you to add some weight to that leg. So find where your sand is. If you have a ball, you're gonna actually tuck that to the sacrum. That's really a nice anchor, not required. So use the sand or any weight that you have that's in reason, you know, not too heavy. And you want to find where this kind of burrows into that outer left leg. So as the left arm sends openness to the chest and the walls of the chest, I think of that as a pretty good description sometimes, that they are kind of like walls. They don't have a lot of contouring, right? So feel your left elbow bend, and when that left arm is softening, can you soften the elbow enough that you feel that it's almost a comforting stretch? So please make this left arm in a place where it's relaxing down, or it's trying and relaxing don't seem to go together in a conversation, but there we go. And then as your right hand can be on the left leg as an extra weight, or on the floor anywhere. And let your eyes close and explore these moments. We've been in a session for just a half an hour, a little bit more, and we've stayed, right, relatively symmetrical until just recent, right? This is the first real excursion, the last two poses where we take it from one side to the next. So just kind of notice how your body responds to divvying up from one side to the other, and really let that weight of the left leg try to cross over and settle on the bolster. Do any futzing you need, right, to get that bolster supporting you. Now, when you finally feel that you're centered, You want to keep this energy through that hip. Okay, so some of you will stay here a little longer who don't want to go into any different excursions for the next 30 seconds, so it's up to you. So you can stay with this position. And then some of us will do a reclining steer pose. So I know some of you are used to doing this and maybe practiced long ago, but it's a nice way to kind of finish this one. It has a good finish to it. So when you move the ball away and you slide that left knee a little higher up on that right side, so you're not what would be called shocking the sacrum when you kind of get out of a pose and there's sharp responses. So you want to kind of keep the flow of energy moving through the low back into the muscles around the glutes, right? So you just get a sense, or that they're the muscles, right? The glutes. So as you roll onto your back, you're going to slide the right foot in and then just let the legs cross, right? So you push down to your right foot and then you are on your back and then you guide your knees to your chest, right? So it's like you just crossed your legs, like you're holding it, right? It's the same direction, like, you know, that funny image of that. I don't know if it works, but somehow we have that in our image bank for holding it. But when you move the knees in, you're going to either bring the hands to the shins or you're going to hold your feet. That's pretty, you know, deep with the pressure in the knee joint, right? So if I hold my feet, it's intensifying that structural ligament tension. So I'm just going to stay with this. Not that it's a just, but I find this is just as well for my hip. I'm completely content with basics. Now it is a bit work onto the knees though, just to do this. So I want you to rock a little side to side. So the play in the pelvis is to soothe around the SI joint. Okay. So as you feel the knees rocking, well, actually not the knees so much, huh? It's the back of the pelvis that's rocking. You're going to reach your body weight. So you're going to lower down the feet, and I want you to feel the wall with your feet. So you're in Supta Tadasana, right? So this is mountain pose on your back, right? And you can push into the wall. It's wonderful to bring your feet together for this. So if you can get them close as possible, take them in together and push into the wall as best as you can. So you're pushing, feeling the energy through the legs, and then move your bolster to the left side. Okay. Now, I'm going to have to scoot a little bit so I stay in screen, I think. You can still see. If you're having trouble seeing me, I'll just make an announcement or get into your screen and let me know. So pushing into that left foot as you bend your right knee, keep the direction of pushing into that left foot as if this is a balancing pose for your spine, right? If you were standing, you'd have to work with this too. So this is a good way to start. Get a hold of that foot with your belt, right? Your right foot, changing sides. And as you hold on, you're going to close the belt off with your left hand's going to grab both sides of the belt. And as my left foot is pushing into the wall, we're going a little faster on this side just to get to the situation that we're in. And cross the right leg, but really use this movement of the leg over to the left to root the back of the pelvis and enjoy using the floor and the wall to align yourself. It's really pretty cool to use a wall for grounding and rooting, and all the classes might end up being wall classes. So push into your right foot. Having an assortment every week is good. Next class won't be totally wall, maybe a minute or two. But push into your foot, and when you feel both feet pushing, the energy is different in the body from each of the pressures, right? Each foot has a different energy swimming through the body from that pressure. The wall, right? That's going to lengthen through the left side of the spine. So before we take the whole hip crossover, bring your mental focus, even if you have to close your eyes to do this, in the left side of your spine. So the left foot, toes up, all the way up through that left side of the spine, grounded. Right leg crosses over to challenge you. And then as you bend your right knee a little deeper, you're going to slide your belt off your foot and then let that right leg try to reach to the bolster. Now, if the bolster is, not in reach for your leg, if it's just truly not there for you, you can put a blanket on top of the bolster, a pillow, like a really small pillow. You can also put a block. Some people use like a block right under their leg like this, and that can be nice if you pull your bolster in closer. You might find that's helpful. So, but if it's not necessary, it just isn't going to help you to add a block necessarily if you're already down. So my left foot is turned out on the wall. It's not staying pointed up. And I'm adding yet another prop. Okay, so get a hold of your sand and center that sandbag to where it feels supportive of your circulation in your thigh. Not just the hip, but the whole thigh itself. The thighs the skin on the muscle slides, right? And as time goes on, it slides more as it ages, right? So use that sliding, right, to get the connective tissue and also the lymph to flow. So think of it all as like, it's like massage, right? So you're trying to massage that sandbag over and then get the skin kind of stuck in that position of stretching through the hip. And then your ball is at the sacrum if you're using that. Your right arm is open likely, and maybe your left hand is touching your sandbag. But scan the body for areas that can use some adjusting. Yeah, and that might be important. Breathing, adjusting the movement of breath, slightly bending through the left knee. Just keep it a micro bend on the bottom leg. You don't want to have it completely in a hooked position because you still want to feel that strength into your back muscles. Yeah, before we turn around, which we will next, when we'll be moving in a prone position, it's going to feel like your core is going to get stronger. So right now I want you to get the twist. So you're plumping up the discs, right? So we're working with that support, that hydration into the back. Plump them up. Okay. And then that final few moments here, feel where that left foot pushes into the wall, just the right amount, not too challenging for your back. So some of these wall poses, use the wall for that weight-bearing energy internally, but internalize how much energy you're going to push into. Okay, now we'll slide the sand away whenever you want. If you don't want to leave the pose, you don't have to. You could stay longer while we come into steer pose. So we can move the ball, but when you do bring that right knee up, you want to kind of help it along. Like you're really trying to help yourself find a way to easeful transition. This is the big piece of it, okay? So when you roll onto your back, you want both knees to hug in and then roll onto the back. So the knees are crossing. Now you might kind of kick your feet up and rock yourself back. And all these are good things to work with. Find that kind of organic way of movement. But when you're in this shape, you're going to hold on to the shins. This is important. The shins are going to become important coming up here. So get a feeling of those shins, and you could squeeze, kind of massage, palpate, of course. If you're really flexible in this position and you feel like you want to hold your feet, these are things that are taught, but I don't know how important that would be in the scheme of things as you move along in your practice, just because the knee joint is a little delicate, right? And it could become sensitive in time to that force and pressure. So we're just keeping the simplicity right now. But with this crossing of the legs, feel where the legs squeeze into guts, right? So massaging into the core for a few more moments. Breathing. See where we're going with this. Good. Now, as you uncross, important here to let the knees center. Now, we're going to bring the body to roll and then come over to the prone position. Now, let's be careful about the knee pressure. So this blanket's behind us or besides us. So it might be a smart move for you to do is to take any blanket nearby that's kind of near where your rear is. You know, you can kind of drop it that space so that when you roll over, you'll probably have to readjust your furniture again. But roll towards the side, and then when you come around to hands and knees, you got something. You don't want to be like shocking your knees immediately. So it's probably worth it just to have that support. Now, the one thing I'm going to change up on this though is that now that your knees are on the firm ground or the carpet, that you want your blanket to be pretty wide, kind of a big square. Okay. Okay, this is important. It's not too bulky under your knees. Now your bolster's kind of off in the side yard. It won't be around till pigeon time, so we'll just put it away. But when you come to this forward pattern, we have a blanket on the other side. You got a couple blocks. We're going to do heart bridge soon, so that's exciting. It's been a while since we did that. So I want you to take the body to this prone position. Get that blanket back there. So that you're lowering down and you're going to bring your blocks in so they're right next to your chest. We'll go right into it. So my blocks are under the chest, and sorry, not under the chest, but right under the armpits. Okay. So you're laying prone down, you have your forehead on your blanket. Now, what you want when you're face down is the blocks are right here, right? So they're not on my chest, right? They're really right into that groove. So when you are pushing down to the blocks, the shoulder, right, that inner band is going to push down to the block. So I want you to push your feet back into the wall so that when your feet push back, your head is down to the blanket and your arms are open, so they're out to the sides. If it's pinching in your armpit, you don't have it in the right spot, okay? So you might need to kind of pivot the block a little bit, turning out so that it doesn't pinch. Sometimes that pinches more though. So play with how that works, but consider that you're broadening at the chest, your forehead is down, and then push your feet into the wall so that the balls of the feet push into the wall, like you're actually using the wall as, again, weight bearing and support for your legs. But I want you to walk the feet a little bit up the wall, not so daring, right? So you're not in a full back bend, but you walk them up just a little bit so that when you push into the balls of the feet and your head is down, that the awareness in the front of the body is starting to build. So should you bring your blanket as far forward, I would do that. Take it under your head and then press. Now start to move your arms back so they're still on the blocks, but you're going to reach both of your arms back by your sides so the palms face towards you. It's not required, right? They don't have to face towards you, but try. If it's too much, palms are towards the ceiling. Push into your feet. Push, push, push. Good. And now lower down your feet and maintain that focus with the blocks. And when your arms are back, you're going to actually try to lift up your head, but it's almost as if you're kind of hovering over the blanket. You kind of see the blanket more than you want to right now, but get a feel of your shoulders moving back. Now the palms are still facing in. I did that incorrectly. My palms are open. So palms facing in. Okay. Now as you move your weight back into your blocks, I want you to slide your hands into the blocks and then move them aside. Move your hands down to slide your elbows forwards to Sphinx pose. And your blanket could be underneath your paws if you want. That's not going to hurt anything. It's just there. But can you push into your feet and let the knees maybe flow a little bit up? So really feel the energy through the front of the hips, through the belly. It's like you're trying to get the whole belly, like it's a tunnel right from the navel up towards the center of the heart. And you're trying to create a little bit of tunnel there of energy. The back is really working here. Okay, feel the elbows down. This is key. And then as you lower your head, you're going to slide your hands back. And then as you elbow in, you're going to press up, but bring your right hand forwards. Left arm sweeps under the right arm and turn your head to the right. So the left side of your head is down. If this is too much direction in your shoulders, then back off. But you want your hips to really feel like they're up. Hips are up. Good. Now as you come unwind, so unthread that left arm, bring the left hand forward. And the right arm reaches under the left and you're going to turn. So the head turns to the left and your weight moves down into that right arm. Now, this is a weave, a shoulder weave, right? So we are weaving into the arms and the upper back muscles. And for many of us, it's a bit of a stretch, right, for the shoulder. So you want to have your head down, right, so you can stretch the arms. It's a good post snow shoveling pose. Okay, now as you come back up, turn the fingers to face back towards the wall. Stretch your wrist. If this is harmful to your sensation, don't do it, right? If it doesn't feel right, you could bring your hands forward and stretch your hips back here. Okay, so take one choice. And then when you feel that stretch through the wrist, you're then going to reach your hands forwards, but take them farther front than a traditional all fours, and reach your hips back. Now, when the hips go back, we're going to lower the elbows down. And I want you to try here to have your elbows on the ground space. If you need to kind of pull up your shirt sleeve so you feel your elbows on the ground, that can be useful here. But when we lift up our knees, okay, this is no wrist pressure at all. So you should feel your forearms on the ground. You're going to lift up your knees and then try to reach your heels a little bit up at the wall, right? So they're not towards the heel base, but you feel your hips up and you feel your forearms on the ground and your head might lightly touch down, but I don't want you to burrow your head into the floor. So feel the arms here for certain. Now, if your hands are moving in together like this means you need something between them, right? So some of us can do this without a block between the hands, and most of us need a block, right? So find the feet hips distance apart, and the upper back strengthening. This gets better with doing it. It only improves with practice. Breathe. Lower your knees down. Center for a second. Let the forearms press down. Feel the hips reach back to your version of child's pose. So that's likely going to be knees apart, toes to touching, hips back. Now, some of us don't fold with this knee pattern like this, so you might be a little bit elevated for a few moments. Take a moment here when you're leaning back, whether you have a block under your forehead or not. Feel the roundness of your back muscles all the way to your shoulders. And then as you feel that stretch through the back of the waist, that lengthening through the spine, we're going to come to a table pose, but I want you to move your blocks. Your blanket extra doesn't need to be there, but move your blocks below your hands and then take the knees into each other and step your right foot forwards between your blocks. Simple. So when I launch into this pattern, I want to give you an awareness that we're going to do just a little bit of standing upright patterns and then move into pigeon and some hip and twist work again. But feel where that left foot pushes back, and if it's not at a wall and you don't want to use a wall anymore, that's going to be okay. That might be adequate. But when you push back into that left foot, I want you to actually lift up the back knee so there's no knee pressure on your blanket. And you can tell that the right knee will tend to push a little bit back for this. So you want to stack your right knee over the ankle so you have a little bit more connectivity back into your right glute. Okay. Now, can you walk your blocks back towards the wall a bit more? Make sure they're at a good height for you, that they're stable. So if it's a little wobbly, you might be at the mid height because that's not going to be as shiftable. But the upper height gives me a little bit more space in my shoulders. So I'm going to lift up my hips and then lower down my left heel as much as I can towards the floor. Right next to the wall. Yeah, if your calf is kind of stiff, you might work with bending the left knee, straightening the left leg, kind of try to move into some twitching motions with the knee and the calf muscles, right? And then take your blocks so that they're rather wide on the space besides your right foot. I'm not going to say mat because some people don't like to have that border, but feel how that back leg is responding, and then see if your right leg can straighten a bit more. If it was bending a lot, try to lengthen it. Yeah, and then take a moment to turn a little to the right. Doesn't mean a lot. And then let that left hand on the block be below your left upper bones. I don't mean that you have to be under the shoulder because I don't want you to lose your balance. So if I have this block too close into my foot, then I will tend to get a little bit off balance. So I have my block underneath my left upper body, and then my right hand onto my sacrum, and then twist to your right. There we go. Good. Good. Now keep it so that the ribs turn and that right foot, inside of that right foot, is trying to make ground. Really try to make sensation down into the floor, both in and outside of the right foot. Yeah, you can feel the waist turn. Now, of course, we have many parts of the spine, so you don't have to have your neck in the twist if you don't want to. You could turn and look down to the floor and still feel other parts of the back twisting. So I think that's kind of cool to notice sometimes, even if it's kind of elementary thinking and posing. It's good to notice you have all these different arches in the back as well. The low back, the mid back is twisting to the right. So try to get a full twist to the right, fine finale, whether you turn to the right and you look up, right, twist the ribs, breathe. It's so different to do twists from standing work than seated. You have just a little more base and surface to turn from, right, than when you're sitting on your sitting bones. It's just different. From foot bones to sit bones. And then come back down. You'll be glad you did it later. Okay, so bend to the right knee. Step the left foot forwards. Take a forward bend any way you like. So feet widen out and then lower down your head. You can hold the back of the legs. It might be a nice break for the hands not to push straight down. And let the head dangle to gently stretch the spinal column. Feel the lift of the sitting bones. Feel the circulation. Bend your knees. Okay, and allow the connectivity to your blocks now to gather so you can feel the hands, maybe take them a little wider. And then as you step that right foot back, Remember, you got this big blanket probably. It's a biggish surface. So underneath you might have to slide it a little forward so we don't trip. But when we reach back through that right leg, we start with a lunge. So we have the left knee above the ankle and the right heel maybe touching the wall. I don't know if you feel different in your calves, but the sequence started with some interesting calf strength work. So you might actually feel a bit of intensity there, but we'll see how this ends up. So feel where that left knee is above the ankle, and then directly straighten out the left leg, or straight-ish, and reach the right heel towards the floor, truly towards the floor. So the wall is good because you can lift up your heel a bit at the wall and start to guide it down. Yeah, I don't know if anyone else feels their calf, but I can feel my back calf a bit. Now, as that right heel is pressing, oh, it is snowing. It's heading down. I don't know if it is where you are. Cheryl's looking out. Okay, well, I got enough basic foods. Okay, so when the heel reaches back and down, I want you to work on the leveling of your hips. This is tricky. It's tricky to get your hips level in this position because what I'm asking you is to keep the left leg in this reaching forward position underneath you, but to turn your hips so the leveling of the hip bones a bit, even though your sitting bones are way different in this position. So when you have your block under your right hand, you're going to turn to your left, and you're just going to let your body gradually turn, and the left hand comes to the sacrum. Is the wisest choice you could have. Your back knee does not have to be straight. You can bend knees on this position. But I want you to be very clear that you have a broadness with your right hand on the block and the left foot. So there's some space between the two so that you can actually twist. Right, so turn, intelligent turning through the rib cage, and then maybe the left arm goes up. Maybe it does. And feel where that waist rotates. Be careful with the blocks so it doesn't fumble too much here because they can get a little rocky, and then next thing you know. So be sure that you can feel your feet on the floor, they're holding you up. Now when you turn a little further to the left, your head can look down. Take a few more moments here. Try to get enough timing so we have the exact minute and a half on each of the leg twistings. Breathe. Okie dokie. Now when you lower down that left hand, we're going to take a wide stance. So turn to your right, take both blocks to the right side, take your hands down to the blocks at a low height that you can go. The right foot or whatever foot you have near the wall is touching on the side so that as you lean your hips back. Okay, I'll give you a little insight. We are going to go from here to pigeon. So what you might do for prep is to move that blanket that's under you and kind of just fold it a little bit over to the right. If you've got a bolster, you might be kind of dragging that into your situation here, right on the mat. But one thing you might work with on this pose is to try to lower your head down to the bolster, right? So that might mean you kind of turn and move things a little bit right to left, or left to right actually. But as you lower down, now the legs can be straight. And you could maybe do this without hyperextending, but have them very straight. Right, we're not Bambi on ice, right? So we want to feel like we're pretty wide stance, but we're not completely falling outwards. But a lot of openness to the legs. Big time stretch. Head down. Take a few more moments. Okay, now don't spend the energy on pulling up the kneecap so much on this one, because I want you to be able to open out through the direction of the hips. So you can feel what it's like when you pull the thighs up, like when you drop the kneecaps. You can feel the energy around the legs. It's not so much in the glutes though, is it? You don't feel a lot of contraction there. But when you slide your blocks in, you want to have them there for you. Use this as weight bearing here for your stomach zone, like you have to resist this, like a little bit of a push-up to be here for your stomach zone. Okay, now turn to your left foot, turn over to the left, and as you walk over, you're gonna pivot your back heel up, lower your right knee down, and walk your left foot over to pigeon. Okay, so left foot toe heel to the right side of your mat, left knee is open, and then when you direct the circulation into your pigeon pose, your right foot is touching the wall. So I'm gonna reach down with my elbows on my blocks. If that's not enough stretch for you, you can bring your elbows farther down to the floor. And that might make it more significant sensation. It's tempting to try it, I know, but I'm trying to carry on the core stretch. So this core like elevation in my midsection, because it feels good when that area has some, stimulation from the practice, the stomach zone. There's enough times when it doesn't feel supported or stimulated, it feels sluggish. So anytime we can kind of boost a bit of that core. Yeah, this has been kind of a fully focused session so far. So we have all of it's going to be that way, I guess. So push into your right foot. I know this feels good on the hip, huh? Can you feel that when your foot pushes the wall? Your hip almost a direct communication. Hip communicators. And the back leg, that knee, when it softens down, you might kind of get a feel for the reach through the back leg, the arch through the spine, the balance of the breath. Okay, now when you shift the sides, I prefer that you stay with that connectivity on the ground base so you're not standing up again. So you lean to your left seat, the left cheek, and then when you bring that right leg forward, the focus is just simple, right? You're going to turn and bring the left foot back. And as you connect from the root level, since we didn't walk the foot across, it was a little different to get into it. You might find it's kind of softer on the hip. It might not make any difference in your awareness at the moment, but feel how that left foot pushes and feel that inside of the right thigh, and that knee is open. So the elbows, as they lower down, then the left foot presses, and stay with it for a little, a good minute and a half. Try to stay committed. The whole set continuing on is all going to be hip focus, hips and spine. So does this connect to your spine at all, or do you feel like it's all kind of rooted in the hip, glute, buttock area? Or can you start to kind of feel that pull of connection to your sacrum, right? So sacroiliac, when you hold the side right here, that's the iliac, right? So you're just connecting into those layers. So let the back be level, so you're not twisting it too much, and a low spine. Breathing to lengthen the exhales. Now, if you notice the weight into that right knee, okay, you're going to let your body weight shift to the right thigh. And now we're going to actually be turning to the wall. So what I want you to do is keep it simple with your leg parts. So we don't want to surprise their direction. So we're going to keep it simple. We're going to bring that left leg forward, kind of like you just did to get out of the last side. But let's turn so that we're turning to face to the wall. And I don't think you want a bolster for this. I use it a lot, but I noticed that at least when I'm taking lessons, we're not using a bolster for all of these rotations. So what I want you to do is just push that bolster aside and sit on just a blanket, okay? if you feel like I can't sit up high, I slump, then you sit on your bolster, right? You just use it. But see if you can take this seated variation, this short little seated set with a blanket. Now my blanket's in a quarter full, but I could have it lower. I could have it in a square. So if it's kind of bulky on your leg, just make the blanket wider or use two of them, in a square. So we're going to take that right foot to the wall. Now I want you to position so it's like, okay, I've got my feet to the wall. They're not perfectly pushing, but my hips are in this lane of travel. And then when I have this left foot pull up and park on the inside of the right thigh, it's true you want to go up, but I'm trying to work in modes of therapeutic work right now. So for some of us, cranking on that leg and pulling it up isn't going to be therapeutic. So I want you to have a block or ball under that left knee if it's not on the floor. If it's not naturally going to the floor, it needs something. That's just true, right? That's a true yoga principle, right? So we have our right foot to the wall. And now what you're going to work with is actually lowering down. So you could have a sandbag on this left thigh. I'm going to go completely without any extra weight and see what happens. Now, when you lower down towards the right leg, okay, can you feel that right hand on the floor or the right leg, one or the other? And I want you to bring that left hand to the sacrum, palm open, and then feel your body lean forward without any belt under the foot. Feel how this left shoulder rolls in. This is something that you'll feel right away. And feel if you can actually shrug the shoulder back. Feel that left shoulder shrug back. And then as you come up, you're going to bring your right hand to the left knee or just above the knee, and then keep that left hand seeking. So bring it to the floor and turn through the waist. And now develop this. This is going to be kind of your finale here today. You're developing this one. You're going to turn back forward, but hold on to that left knee and then cross that left leg over the right. So the right foot is still at the wall. Really important. And then you're going to try to hook that right elbow to that left leg and twist. That's right. So when you feel that rotation, well done. You get a feel of where this left hand could be. It could be on a block. It doesn't feel like you have enough support. But you're hooking that right elbow to that left leg, and you are trying to stimulate the stomach muscles. This is a good thing to work with, pre-digestion kind of work. So feel the elbow press, probably more pre than post, right? It'd be hard to do this after eating. Okay, so breathe in, belly full, exhale, feel the body twisting. When you feel that rotation, can you feel the ribs? And then change the sides. Don't spend too much energy muddling in the middle, but feel the right foot now draw up to the left inner leg. So you're centering the hips and you're going to lean forwards. Okay, and I want you to keep it real simple. You're just going to lean forward and down. Now I need something under my right leg. Okay, just the way it goes. I'd rather have you be seated on, and if you're seated on one blanket and your knee is really high up, that's typical. Let's say you're seated on a bolster of two blankets, your knee probably will go down a little easier. So it's just the proportion of the lift of the hips. Kind of like when you sit in a chair, that's like a lot more of height. Similar, all of it is supportive. So lean forward. Now walk your hands maybe a little farther forward. You can always attach a hand to the leg. That's okay. Sometimes that grounding. But the reason I'm also using the blanket is so there's a little less hyperextension in the back of the straight leg. The bolster is going to make it more so. I know there's always something to learn, huh? So draw up this left kneecap, right? Try to suck up the top of the thigh, the quadriceps, so the kneecap pulls up, which is very challenging. And then you're going to start to come up and turn to your right. Bring the left hand to the right leg and twist. So you get a feel of the rotation through the ribs. Push into that left foot. Make sure the toes are facing up at the wall. rotate further. I know that's about as much as you go when you first initiate the twist. And then turn forward, picking up that right leg, cross it over the left leg, and then push into the wall with your left foot, and then hook the left elbow. If you can, if you don't find that helpful, hold the knee and hook the elbow or the hand around the knee and twist. But get the twist into the spinal column. Rotate. Final patterns here. Okay, now feel the body. Try to be patient with yourself for these moments ahead. You can be already outside, but feel where you are presently. And then we start to take away that grip with the left arm, and you come forward, cross the right foot in front of the left knee. And now if you have that bolster nearby, you're gonna just place that in front of you and bring your hands on top to stretch into that right hip. You can put a sandbag on the right upper thigh or keep it right here. This is fine. Okay, so leaning forward, crossing the legs, right? So you're in what's called Sukhasana, easy pose. I don't think this is quote unquote easy, but it's considered easy crossing. Sukhasana. It's a great word. And as you take the cross into the other leg, left leg forward and right, and come forward. And now we're going to drain out the legs like we did somewhat in the beginning, that second shape. So what I'm going to have you work with here is to put the blocks under the bolster, and you want to find that there is a significant, I like to tip them up a little bit, but you might kind of play with that. If you tip them up and your bolster's kind of slanted like so, you could also slant your bolster. But the idea is, this is fine too, it doesn't have to be super technical there, but is that your legs are up, and when you lie back, you want to feel like the legs are really relaxing. Sandbag on the ribs could be a nice treat here. The legs are able to touch the feet to the wall and they separate, right? So you want some separation. Sometimes tilting the bolster makes it easier on the knees. This makes a little bit more harsh pressure on the back of the legs. So kind of play with that circulation in the back of the legs, and then add your sand across the leveling below the sternum. So think of the body as architecturally having these different patterns where you feel some symmetry. And sometimes you have to kind of fuss around until you feel connected with it, okay? So come into this shape for a few moments. Feel your arms measurably space open, the chest. And if you're not content with your legs like this, and it just doesn't feel like you can relax into it, you could certainly change them. You could let the feet turn out. You could also bring your feet to a Baddha Konasana, cobbler's pose on the bolster. So do find what you can come into that would be friendly to your nervous system. And then as the in-breath fills up the core, let the out-breath help you surrender. Feel that continuous motion of receiving and letting go. And knowing that the abdominal motion is soothing, resolving, and nourishing. Now with a few more moments, we have our shoulders back, our chest lightly open. I want you to bring your position of your legs so that the feet are on the bolster with the knees pointing towards you. So they angle a little bit towards you, And as you guide your legs in towards your chest, you can slide the sand off. You can keep it on. And as you gradually move your knees a little side to side, hold the back of your legs. Massage the outer rim of the sacrum. Gradually, when the knees go side to side, a little circling can be a nice addition to releasing in the back. And roll to one side and let your hands help push you up. And then find a centered position for a few moments so that we can feel some sense of collective connection. And as your knees are moving outwards and your hips are centering up and towards the heart, lift up the hands, center the brain down to